Hey, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing The Witcher Path of Destiny from Go On Board. The Witcher Path of Destiny is a 1 to 5 player game that will have you diving into the stories of The Witcher. You'll be taking control of a character, diving into a particular tale, and then influencing its outcome, being a part of the Path of Destiny. This is a prototype, all rules and components subject to change. I'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below. There's a deluxe version, there's a non-deluxe version, there's things that are being added to the game, more stories, more characters, more everything. Check out all of that, and of course, disclaimer that I do work for GameFound, where this campaign is currently being hosted on. This is not a sponsored video by any kind, but please take that into account. With that, what is this game? This is a storytelling game. Sort of, or at least there's a decent amount of storytelling in the game. But in the game, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be trying to take control of the story. You're going to have your own starting character, you're going to have your own asymmetric abilities, you'll be leveling up their experience as you go, while also trying to be mindful of getting points, because ultimately, points is how you win the game. You're going to have your starting hand of cards, and you're going to have a tale that you're diving into. In this prototype over here, I have 3 tales. Again, I believe the final game is going to have more tales added to it, but right now, we have the Striga, and we're going to go ahead and open up this book and start reading through the text. This is where, and I'll spare you the actual reading over here, but you'll actually read through, you know what, I'm not going to spare you the reading, I'm going to read for like, just a second or two. For a long time now, you've been hearing unbelievable news about the castle in Vesemir. I should have spared you the reading. Rumor has it that the place is haunted, or that the castle has come to life and feasts on the blood of its dwellers, or even that a monster has taken over the royal court. You have been summoned before King Foltest. Beneath the facade of composure, the sovereign's face conceals the shadows of a past tragedy. My daughter, I'd been mourning her death for 7 years before she returned. And this is where I'll leave it off. But you're going to be diving into the story. You'll get some backstory. You'll get whatever setup text there are, or whatever changes there are, because each of the stories have small different mechanical changes as far as how you interact with the game, different rules, different modifications. For example, over here we have these secret goals of how we're trying to influence the outcome. You're going to go ahead and continue diving into until you have the starting page you're diving into, and that's where you're trying to influence the outcome. You see, each story has 8 different endings. There are going to be 3 different choices you make, resulting in 8 different endings, because each of them will branch into 2 different directions. So you have 2 possibilities, then 4 possibilities, then 8 possibilities across the end of that story arc, and you're going to be trying to ultimately draft cards to accomplish as many to gather as many points as possible by trying to be a part of influencing the story. So what you're going to do is you're going to gather your token. Whoever's highest up in this turn or track is going to gather the token, and they're going to take it to try to influence which of these symbols are more dominant, and these will tell you which symbols are going to be on the next thingy depending on how you influence the story. So let's pretend over here, based on being Geralt over here and taking a look at my hand, I currently have, well, not a ton of either of the symbols. I have a drop more of these in my starting hand. So you know what, maybe we'll go ahead and head that way, although alternatively, let's go ahead and head that way, because all these things are going to have different ways that they impact the story, but you're ultimately going to be playing 2 cards 3 times in each stage. So you're going to be drafting 2 cards, playing 2 cards, drafting 2 cards, playing 2 cards, repeat that 3 times in a stage, and that's going to be a full stage. That's going to determine where you go to the next stage, and you're going to do that 3 total times before adding up all your victory points across the course of the game. So right now, let's go ahead and take this, and right now I actually have, let's just pretend we swap these over here so you can see, Geralt take a turn. We're going to go ahead and look at the board. If we are trying to influence that way, there are different things we could do, but none of them are particularly strong in terms of gathering extra symbols. I don't have a lot of green cards, so this won't be helpful, because this ability is going to give me 1 symbol, which will help influence the story in that direction, but also, if I played 1 green card, it'll give me 2 experience points as well, so that will be helpful as well. Over here, I could go with the red card, but the red card doesn't influence the story in the right direction either, so none of those are particularly helpful as far as what I have going on over here. These are going to lower the impact. Honestly, none of these are great. I may end up just playing some basic cards from my hand and seeing how this goes, because none of these are that strong. I could always go here, drawing from the top of the deck, but I don't think I want to do that. I think I'm going to go down to the bottom, and that will at least give me an extra experience point because I'm getting that. So I'm going to move up on the experience joint track, I'm going to gather these cards, and the other players are going to go to other areas, taking the various other cards that they have, and then going over. That is the wrong person's deck over here. She's going to go over here, taking these cards, and then we'll have these last 2 cards left over. When everyone has their cards, they're going to go ahead and secretly look at their hand and secretly pick some cards. So for example, on my end, I don't have any strong options. I'm going to go with something very basic, which is not what I want to do, but it's going to be what I do over here because I'm trying to influence the outcome. We're going to have this character over here choosing as far as how they influence things. So let's go ahead and choose their options. She might go fairly basic in the other direction. Now keep in mind, obviously, that, she might hedge her bets with this. That's not a bad card choice to select over here. Keeping in mind that I'm playing for all 3 characters when you wouldn't actually do that. There is a solo mode as well if you want that. This character over here, again, there's no strong options for Ciri over here. I could I could go with that if I had a yellow. I don't have a yellow. I could go with that to at least get that. That is actually interesting. Let's do that. Let's do this combination of cards. So you'll be able to see a nice combination of abilities as we go through this. We're going to go ahead and reveal our cards as far as what we have over here and show you the cards everyone's playing and how they impact things. So in total, we're going to have these symbols over here. Let's grab a little negator. This one over here says we ignore one of these symbols. So we're going to cover that up, and that's going to give us 2 of these. So she's actually fairly balanced. She's going to be influencing both of these stories over here. So we have 2 towards this side and 2 towards that side. Over here, Geralt over here is only influencing that side. So that's 2 towards this side. And over here, we have 2 towards this side. But then one final one shifts it over, which means we actually are going to end up totally on this side. So we're going to take this round 1 token, and the first round is going to be 1 point in favor of moving towards exploring the castle as opposed to talking to the people over here. Because again, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, versus we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's 4 over there. And then at this point, what's going to happen now is, well, you're going to actually go to the next round. We're going to hold this up. You're going to have all the players are going to have their cards in front of them, and you're going to go through another round of doing that. And then a third round of doing that, so that by the time you're done, you're going to have a total of 6 cards, and you'll have totally impacted the arc of which direction you go in the story. So over here, maybe you go ahead, maybe round 2, we actually swayed it this direction, and then round 3, it finally favored this direction, going back over here this direction. And so what's going to happen now is everyone's going to get points and experience depending on the symbols they have in their board. You'll get points for the symbols match the chosen direction. So everyone has one of these symbols, will get a point for these symbols moving up on these tracks accordingly. Versus for these symbols over here, everyone's going to get experience points that will help them move up on this track, which will also give them endgame points while also unlocking abilities in the game. So both are important, and no matter what happens, you will not be leaving it empty-handed. Additionally, the players who have played the most in both sides will get an additional benefit as well. And then from there, you're going to go ahead and take a look at the story and choose that arc. So in this case, we're going to page 10 over here. So we're going to go ahead, they're going to discard any symbol. Each player is going to discard the symbol tokens from the tableau, choose a card to keep, and discard all the remaining ones. And then we're going to go straight to page 10 over here, where we can go ahead and continue the story as far as the next step, which again will give us some narrative text, it'll give us some benefits for whoever had the most symbols on both sides. And then we're going to go ahead and once again make another choice. Do we talk calmly or do we intimidate? Again, having that impact, which will then bring you to your third choice, and then finally an epic tale conclusion with a bit more story mixed into the experience. That's basically what's happening in the game. You're drafting cards, you're trying to combine them, you're trying to find the way you utilize abilities, because there are a ton of different card abilities. There are going to be benefits that reward you for having that many cards in your tableau. You'll have different cards over here that reward you for the more green cards you have in your tableau, the more of these symbols you'll gather. You're going to be trying to earn these symbols using the various tokens over here when you need to like proxy or throw a symbol in there. You'll be covering up symbols and trying to take advantage of those, and you're also working with a private goal that wants you to have a certain number of cards of a different color left in your hand, different based on each player over here. And then you also, as you move the track over here, you can be slowly earning more abilities, and these abilities are going to be abilities you can cash in to be able to get additional perks, drawing extra cards, playing extra cards, being able to see more information, things like that as you go through the experience. But that is basically The Witcher Path of Destiny. There are some small details. There are going to be the different things. So, for example, in this particular scenario over here, there's the opportunity to try to peek at these various cards over here to see, depending on how the story ends, you'll have different ones of these bonus point cards in play. So you both want to see how you're going to get bonus points while also trying to influence the story in that direction so you can get the points that you've prepared for as you go through it. And there'll be some small nuances as far as the differences in terms of, player counts. So, for example, in a 2-player game, you actually end up counting the leftover board as a third player. So whatever cards are left over in the grid over here will count towards being an additional player, and you'll add up their symbols against the opposing side. And so you're taking things and trying to be mindful that you won't get the abilities in those remaining cards, but you will get the symbols, which gives an additional layer of trying to play off the board in addition to the other player. And then solo mode, I haven't dove into myself, so I can't comment on that. But that's basically The Witcher Path of Destiny. Which means it's time to review, starting off with ease of play. The game, for the most part, is fairly easy to walk into. The overarching turn sequence of what you do is you go ahead and gather 2 cards, you play 2 cards, you do that 3 times per story choice, and then you do that story choice segment 3 times per game, and that's going to be how you play. Past that, there's some small nuances as far as the symbology. The back of the rulebook has a quick aid as far as all the symbology, so you can quickly check up anything that is not immediately clear. I would say some things are not immediately clear, but the back of the rulebook gives you the very easy accessibility for that. You're going to be diving into the individual story aspects as far as the different stories and the small nuanced rule changes that they bring to the table, but again, all that's fairly present. present, and the game takes roughly 45 minutes to an hour. It will depend on your player count and how fast players play, but you can knock out a game of this with people who know how to play easily in an hour, or less for that matter. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, the biggest thing is the core gameplay loop of trying to gather cards and then comboing them off of each other. Now, there's not some tremendous amount of comboing going on, but there are enough abilities, there are enough little symbols in the cards and different things you can be doing that trying to find ways to play towards both symbols, because in general, you want to play towards both symbols to a degree. There is that trade-off aspect of playing towards both symbols gives you the fact of you're helping the other side achieve their goal. If you're trying to make side one win, you're also helping the other side. But the flip side is you get things for playing to both sides. You get experience, which early game is going to be very helpful because it'll give you abilities and points. Late game is just points, so it depends how many points you can get out of that versus the direct points of playing directly into the side that's going to win. But you're trying to find the best combinations of cards that both lean in towards how many cards you're trying to hold onto at the end of the game for your extra bonus points, how many cards you're trying to play across the 9 rounds of play you're going to have, and which cards are going to combo well with each other. You're trying to slowly pick up cards from different sets of cards to be able to hold on to them for that right moment when they're going to be the most impactful, and that's where seeing the upcoming symbols is a big part of the experience. But there's a decent amount of card comboing, there's a decent amount of trying to predict around how to hold on to a good hand of cards and utilize it towards your advantage. The card play in this game is very accessible, very easy to understand, and yet still rewarding to go through. You also always get something, which is a big thing for me, especially because my biggest pet peeve of the game, when we get into the things we don't like, the things I don't like come down, well, we'll get into the things we don't like soon, but I like the fact that you always get something. I like the fact that it doesn't matter if you chose the wrong side, you're still getting something for it. You're getting experience, you're getting abilities, you're getting points. Yes, it is better to choose the right side, it is better to arc towards that right side, but how you play, or even the table talk involved. This is a game that can have a large degree of table talk if players are trying to manipulate others, either through obfuscating their goals or intentionally throwing them off in the wrong direction, or it could be very straightforward, you can just play your own game and don't worry about it, or you're always direct with the other players. The players at the table and their dynamic is going to affect how the game gets played, but regardless of all that, you always get something, which is a big deal to me. You never walk away from a hand of cards being like, well, I guess the rest of the table went that direction, I went this direction, so my whole game's gone. No, you get experience points, you'll utilize those, and that will hopefully bring you forward. In those final rounds, it can be a little bit more punishing, but especially early on, you do always walk away with something, which is a big deal. Being a part of the story is another thing that I enjoy about this game. The game is going to have you going through, possibly, depending on if you're familiar with the Witcher universe or not, but you're possibly going through familiar tales, or you're possibly going through tales that you've never played before, but either way, you do have a sense of story going on here, not just pure mechanics. There are mechanics at play, and 100% if you're looking at the board and you're saying, well, these cards are going to be much better for me, well, you might want to focus on that. Even if you instinctively want to talk calmly, you might end up intimidating because it works better for the upcoming symbols, but very often you will find yourself approaching this thematically as well. How do you want to influence that story? Whether you've read the books, the comics, whether you've watched the Witcher TV show, whether you've played the video game, whatever your introduction to the story has been, this is your opportunity to affect it from a different viewpoint as you go through the path of destiny. I like the fact that there are different stories in the game. One story has 8 endings, sure, but that's not necessarily enough. We'll get into some of those things later, but it's not necessarily enough variability in terms of the way the game feels. The 8 endings will give you 8 different endings, but the core gameplay is similar regardless of how it ends up. Having different stories gives you more room to explore the narrative, it gives you more room to explore the choices, and it gives you more room to have a degree of variety going on because of the different elements that they bring to the table. Speaking of variety, I like the asymmetric roles. Each of these characters over here, and I just have 3 over here, but there's already 2 more in the prototype, and I believe they've already unlocked more that will be in the final version. Again, I'm not sure what's in the basic versus deluxe version, but there's going to be a bunch of characters all with their own asymmetric abilities, which gives you more ways to try to explore them as far as how to utilize those abilities to your advantage as you play through this. And it does all of that in a fairly fast-playing game that works well at a variety of player counts. As far as things I don't like in the game, the biggest thing for me, is the fact that at the end of the day, this is a game that, to a certain extent, comes down to choosing the side that others choose. Now, whether you do that through manipulating the table, convincing the table, obfuscating your intentions to the table, at the end of the day, if you're playing this game at a 3, 4, 5 player game, you are ultimately trying to influence how the table is going to move, and if you do so incorrectly, that affects whether you walk away with experience, which is useful, or points, which is how you win. And especially in that final round where the differential between points and experience is the most notable, this means to a large extent the game can be decided based on the fact that, Jack and Jill went that way and I went the other way, and that changes how the game plays. If you don't like stock-taking games, if you don't like games where part of winning is choosing the winning side to a certain degree, being on the side that chose that side in the majority can come down to how this game ultimately ends. That is a big part of the experience, and to a certain extent it's why I actually really like this game at 2 players. The 2-player mode has you facing off against each other and relying on the cards in the center as the final 3rd player going on, which gives you a lot more of a sense of control of you're playing against a lot more known information and a lot less based on, well, I chose the winning side or whatnot, because all that information is more present. So as much as I enjoy, I'm not sure if 2 player is my favorite player count, but I will say that the 2-player game does have certain advantages that make some of the strategic aspects of it. I'd say the gameplay in general, I think, is more fun at higher player counts, but in terms of the pure strategic agency, I like the 2-player game for that reason. So that is since it's the main game mechanic to a degree, I find stock-taking games always have that risk of a player winning based on choosing the right side, and that's certainly present here because it has that stock-taking feel to it. I'll also say that the branching gameplay aspect, the branching pathways and stories you take, don't have any real gameplay mechanics, or at least not enough gameplay changes to them. Sure, there's different symbols at play as far as what you're going for, but I almost wish that there were actual mechanical changes as you went down different roads and not just a prioritization of different symbols. And so I wish the branching pathways had more of an impact on the game as opposed to being more of a small impact, but not a huge impact as far as how the game plays or how the game feels. I almost wish there were rules instructions. You know, hey, you flip a page, and depending on which pathway you go, each path adds a new branching rule, and so you could have a ton of different variety as far as how the game plays out, depending on the sequence of branching pathways you choose. I wish there was more of an impact of the branching pathways, as opposed to right now, it's there, but it's not a huge thing. As far as I can see others not liking, first of all, the game can feel fairly basic if you don't get or appreciate the card comboing. This game is chock full of card comboing. This game is chock full of trying to find the right sequence of cards and how to play them, but the game does feel pretty basic until you start picking up the nuances of how to optimize your hand around the game state, of how to look for the right cards that will pair nicely, of how to push stuff a little further in it. But if you don't get any of that, if it just feels like picking up symbols, the rest of the game isn't strong enough to carry you past that if you don't appreciate the main mechanism of how the cards play. As far as final thoughts on The Witcher Path of Destiny, I've overall very much enjoyed this game. It's a very simple game as far as the rules. It's a very simple game to teach and to play. You can get people up and running in this game in 5, maybe 10 minutes. It's an easy game to teach people and then give them the extra little details as far as how certain things operate as you start going through it. The symbology, the back of the rulebook has you covered, or you can help guide them through that. But it's an easy game to teach. It's an easy game to play. It plays in a short enough playtime, and it works well at 2, 3, 4, and 5 players. Again, I have not played the solo mode. I can't comment on that. So it's an easy overall game to dive into, and it's one that is rewarding enough in the gameplay. It gives you a bunch of different things that are rewarding. It gives you asymmetric play. It gives you variety of the experiences. It gives you choose your own adventure in the storytelling. It gives you card play as well as, I think those are the main things. You always get something in it. There's a bunch of things I like about the gameplay. Overall, I've really enjoyed my time with The Witcher Path of Destiny. For me, this is a 4 out of 5. The main thing holding it back is that one mechanic, which is a core part of how the game plays, and it's something that when you get to the final game, if you feel like you've chosen the wrong side of history, well, you get punished in points this time round. And so that's the one thing that holds back, which is a core way that the game plays. But a 4 out of 5 for me. Really enjoyed my time with The Witcher Path of Destiny. As far as other game recommendations, if you're looking for another stock-taking game to a degree, Dogs of War from CMON is a hard-to-get game. It's a little out of print, hard to hunt down, but if you like stock-taking in games, one of the best implementations I've seen of it is Dogs of War from CMON. And if you're looking for more Witcher, but in an entirely different setting, The Witcher: The Old World is going to be a great game from Go On Board that's going to give you an entirely different setting to the Witcher system, giving you an adventure game with a lot of moving around the map, upgrading your characters, engaging in combat, and hunting down various monsters along the way. In any case, then until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this video helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.